The part people don't know about this story is really the full unfolding of it goes back to the 1930s. New York State made a constitutional amendment to the state constitution, which which required the state to provide housing for the homeless, essentially. And it was sort of vaguely worded. So in the 80s and 90s, the courts in New York began interpreting that more and more strictly. Almost no other state, I'm not sure if any other state actually has something in its state constitution requiring that kind of a thing. So basically what happened is the judges ended up interpreting this more strictly. Obviously, the original purpose of this is for New Yorkers that are homeless to be housed. But they ended up interpreting it so strictly that when the Republican governors in Texas and Florida began sending a few thousand migrants up to New York City as kind of an FU to the liberal cities that have declared themselves sanctuary cities without actually having to deal with the kind of border crisis that Texas does. The first few thousand found that legally New York had to house them. And then word got down to Mexico that if you make it to New York City, you will not be turned away. Legally, you don't even have to be a citizen for the state amendment to apply to you. So what began as a few, let's say the first 10 or 15,000 were sent by the Republican governors as a kind of political tactic, has now become tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands coming of their own volition to New York City. And it's the only state in the country where Mayor Adams has no legal recourse to send people elsewhere. He actually cannot do it. He's tried to do executive orders, but he legally can't because it's in the state constitution. It's above his power. And now it's its own. It's taken on a life of its own, way over and above what the Republican governors started. So this is why he's going to the national media and literally saying, I can't do anything about this. I'm trying to do something about this, but I can't. And we're putting people up in Airbnbs for $100 a night, and the city will be bankrupt in X number of years if we don't find a solution to this.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was looking at a video of the Roosevelt Hotel, which is no longer a hotel. They've essentially said this is now a center for housing migrants.
Right.
And they've said the restaurant is no longer a restaurant. And sorry, that's just how it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you do if you own the Roosevelt Hotel and you just wanted it to be a hotel, and now the state just says nope?
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't blame any of these people. If I was born in Mexico,
100%,
we'd all be doing the same thing. It's
100%.
It's a smart thing to do from their perspective. But that doesn't mean from our perspective that we should just put out the bat signal to the whole world and say, you can come to New York City and we have no legal recourse to move you anywhere else.
It's not just New York City. It's other parts of the world. It's strange that recently it's become this crisis where migrants are coming en masse to these places and just flooding them. Like, is this orchestrated? Is this just a fact that they found out that they can do it and it's better than where they are? And if they go there, these places that are, essentially, they're charitably minded and they would like to house people that are down on their luck, but now people are sort of taking advantage of that loophole and just swarming.
I think that's what it is. I think the whole Western world has become much more open to immigration recently. Obviously, America was open to immigration in the 19th century, but we were the outlier. All the other countries of the world, the default was closed borders, essentially. So I think the whole world has, out of empathy for the poor and struggling, has wanted to have more permissive immigration, but that sends an incentive to people of the world that they can now come, they can, abuse asylum laws. And again, I don't even blame people for doing this because it's exactly what I would do if I were born in Guatemala or Syria. I would say, hey, I'm a refugee. This is my story, and I would probably lie about it in order to get a better life than the one life that I had. But this is just a true side effect of those compassionate laws: is that people abuse them. You get, immigration pools that are vastly proportionally male, which is how you know that they're not refugees, because where are the women?
Right.
And it's a side effect of the intended compassionate immigration policy. This is how this works. This Thomas Sowell's great quote: "There are no solutions, there are only trade-offs." This policy has a trade-off. It's more compassionate, but it also leads to, in the case of New York, what could be a serious fiscal crisis.
Someone told me this. I was looking to check into this, but I figured I'd wait until the podcast. Someone was telling me that the Biden administration is talking about sending people back to Venezuela, deporting Venezuelans. See if you can find anything about this.
Why Venezuela specifically?
Because Venezuela is dealing with a communist socialist government, and they wouldn't vote for that in America. Now, one of the things that's weird about this crisis is it comes at the same time as people trying to say that you should have no voter ID. And they've openly spoken about it in New York, that people who are illegal immigrants should be allowed to vote.
Yeah,
which is really, look, I cannot talk shit.
They've been pushing for that for years.
I cannot talk shit because I am the product of immigration. My parents,
yeah, as am I.
My grandparents came over here in the 1920s, and that is just, okay. Like, that's why I'm here.
Where'd they come from?
They came from Italy and Ireland, and that's just why I'm here. So they came over when they knew that they could have a better life in America, and these people are doing the same thing, and I understand it, but it's just wild that there's no requirements. It's like there's no background checks. There's no checks to see if you're on a terrorist watch list. You're just like letting people through. Biden administration will begin deporting Venezuelan migrants directly to Venezuela. I mean, that is just so
the idea is Venezuelans
transparent.
are going to vote right-wing like Cubans.
Yes, like
they
Cubans.
hate socialism.
Exactly, because it's ruined their country.
I'm curious, what is his stated rationale, though?
This is okay. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas confirmed that the administration has successfully negotiated a deal with Venezuela to execute the policy, but did not say whether Venezuela was getting anything from the U.S. in return. "We are a nation of immigrants, and we are a nation of laws," Mayorkas said at the same Thursday press conference. Officials said that some migrants have already been identified for deportation. Starting today, the United States will begin direct repatriations of Venezuelan nationals back to their home country. And in fact, we have already identified individuals in our custody today who will be removed promptly in the coming days, a senior official said. Venezuelans make up a large share of border crossings, and for years, the U.S. has generally been unable to deport them because of frosty diplomatic relations with Venezuela.